My name is Joanna, and I am 34 years old. I am standing in the house my grandmother left me, the place where I spent every summer of my childhood learning to bake, to laugh, to love. My husband just announced he is selling it to move in with another woman. He expected me to cry, to beg, to crumble. But he forgot about the papers he signed 8 years ago without reading a single word. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow along as I share how one greedy man discovered he owned nothing at all. The house stood on a quiet street in suburban Pennsylvania, a Victorian two-story beauty that had weathered more than 80 years of storms, celebrations, and family secrets. Its white wooden siding had been repainted countless times, each layer a testament to the generations who had called it home. The wraparound porch creaked in all the right places, and the garden out front bloomed with roses that my grandmother Ruth had planted when she was barely 20 years old. I spent every summer of my childhood in that house. From June to August, my mother would drive me the 3 hours from our apartment in the city, and I would burst through that front door like I had been holding my breath for months. Grandma Ruth would be waiting in the kitchen, flour dusted on her apron, the smell of cinnamon rolls filling every corner of the house. Those summers shaped who I became. Grandma Ruth taught me how to roll pie crust until it was thin enough to see light through. She showed me how to can tomatoes from the garden, how to mend a torn hem, how to sit quietly on the porch swing and watch fireflies without needing to fill the silence with words. She was a widow by the time I was born, having lost my grandfather when she was only 40 years old. She raised 3 children alone in that house, working as a seamstress during the day and taking in ironing at night. One summer evening when I was about 12, we sat together on that porch swing, the crickets singing their nightly chorus. She turned to me with those sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through everything, and said something I have never forgotten. A wise woman always has a backup plan, Joanna. Not because she expects the worst, but because she respects herself enough to be prepared. I did not fully understand what she meant at the time. I was too young, too sheltered, too convinced that love would always be enough. But Grandma Ruth had learned the hard way that life does not always cooperate with our hopes. When she passed away, I was 24 years old and just starting my career as an accountant. The grief hit me like a physical blow. I had lost not just a grandmother, but a mentor, a confidant, my fiercest supporter. But even in death, she protected me. Her lawyer called me 2 weeks after the funeral to explain that she had placed the house in a family trust years earlier, naming me as the sole beneficiary. The house would be mine, separate from anything else protected and preserved. At the time, I simply felt grateful. I did not realize she had given me a shield. I met Derek at a company holiday party when I was 26. He worked in sales at a firm that did business with my accounting company, and he walked into that crowded ballroom like he owned it. Tall, confident, with a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He found me standing awkwardly by the punch bowl, trying to look like I belonged, and struck up a conversation that lasted 3 hours. Derek had a way of making everything seem possible. He talked about his dreams of climbing the corporate ladder, of traveling the world, of building a life that meant something. He asked me questions about my own ambitions and actually listened to the answers. After years of dating men who seemed more interested in themselves than in me, Derek felt like a revelation. Our first dates were magical in their simplicity. Dinner at a little Italian restaurant where the owner knew everyone by name. Long walks through the park on Sunday afternoons. Movie nights on my couch where we would talk for hours after the credits rolled. He brought me flowers for no reason, remembered the small things I mentioned in passing, made me laugh until my stomach hurt. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I said yes before he finished the question. I was so certain I had found my person, the one who would stand beside me through everything life could throw at us. I had no idea I was wrong. A week before the wedding, my mother Sandra asked me to meet her for lunch. She had something important to discuss, she said, and it could not wait. I assumed she wanted to talk about last-minute wedding details, or maybe give me some motherly advice about marriage. Instead, she handed me a folder across the table. "Your grandmother wanted me to give this to you before you married anyone," she said. I promised her I would. Inside were copies of the trust documents, along with a handwritten letter from Grandma Ruth. The letter explained everything. She had seen too many women lose everything in bad marriages, including her own sister who had been left destitute after her husband ran off with another woman. She wanted me to have security, no matter what happened. Mum explained that while I did not need to doubt Derek specifically, it would be wise to keep the house separate from marital property. She suggested having Derek sign a waiver, relinquishing any claim to the house before the wedding. It was just paperwork, she said. A formality. Protection. I felt torn. Part of me worried that asking Derek to sign anything would seem like I did not trust him, like I was already planning for our marriage to fail. But my mother reminded me of Grandma Ruth's words about backup plans. "It is not about distrust," she said. "It is about wisdom. Your grandmother taught you that." I called my best friend Lauren, who had recently passed the bar and was working as a family lawyer. She drew up a simple waiver of marital property rights for the house. I rehearsed how I would explain it to Derek a dozen times. When I finally showed him the papers, my hands were trembling. I told him about the trust, about my grandmother's wishes, about how the house was a family legacy I needed to protect. I braced myself for anger, for hurt, for a difficult conversation. Derek barely glanced at the documents. He shrugged, signed where Lauren had marked with little flags, and kissed my forehead. "I get it, babe," he said. "It is your grandmother's house. No big deal." He did not read a single word. He did not ask any questions. At the time, I thought it meant he trusted me completely, that he did not care about money or property, only about us. Looking back, I think he just did not want anything to slow down the wedding. He was already looking ahead to the life he thought he was getting. Our wedding was beautiful. White flowers everywhere. A string quartet playing as I walked down the aisle, all our friends and family gathered to celebrate. I wore my grandmother's pearls, and I could almost feel her presence in that church watching over me. Derek looked so handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes bright with what I believed was love. We moved into the house together and began building our life. I thought I had everything I had ever wanted. A husband who adored me, a home filled with memories, a future stretching out golden and bright. I had no way of knowing that the papers Derek signed without reading would one day save me from losing everything. The first 5 years of our marriage felt like proof that I had made the right choice. Derek and I fell into a comfortable rhythm, the kind of easy partnership that I had always hoped for. We would wake up together on weekend morning and make elaborate breakfasts, eggs and bacon and pancakes stacked high, laughing when I inevitably burned something. We spent our evenings on that wraparound porch, watching the seasons change, making plans for the future. We talked about children often. Derek said he wanted at least 2, maybe 3, a house full of noise and laughter. I would imagine our kids running through the garden, learning to bake in the same kitchen where I had learned. We would be the family I had always dreamed of building. Together, we poured ourselves into the house. We repainted the living room a warm cream color, replaced the creaky stairs, planted new rose bushes alongside the ones Grandma Ruth had tended for decades. Every project felt like we were weaving our story into the fabric of the home, adding our own chapter to its history. Derek's career was taking off during those years. He got promoted twice each time, coming home with champagne and grand plans for how we would celebrate. His salary nearly doubled, and he started talking about the kind of life we could afford now. Vacations to Europe, a nicer car, maybe even a summer cottage somewhere by the water. My own career was progressing too. I had become a senior accountant, then department head, respected by my colleagues, and proud of what I had built. Between us, we were comfortable. More than comfortable. We were thriving. Or so I thought. The changes started so gradually that I almost missed them. It was the 6th year of our marriage when Derek began working late more often. At first, it was once or twice a week. Then it became every other night. He would come home after 9 o'clock, too tired to eat the dinner I had kept warm, too exhausted to do anything but collapse into bed. His company is expanding, he explained. They need me to close more deals, bring in bigger clients. It is just temporary. I believed him because I had no reason not to. I was proud of how hard he was working, supportive of his ambitions. I picked up more of the household responsibilities without complaint, telling myself this was what marriage meant. Partnership. Sacrifice. But other things started shifting too. Derek joined a gym and began working out with an intensity I had never seen from him. He bought new clothes, expensive suits, and trendy casual wear that looked nothing like his usual style. He started using cologne that cost more than our weekly groceries. I complimented the changes because I thought he was taking care of himself, investing in his professional image. I did not notice that he never wore those new clothes when we went out together. I did not realize the cologne was not for me. His phone became a constant companion, always in his hand or face down on the table. I would catch him smiling at the screen late at night, his face lit up in the darkness of our bedroom. When I asked who he was texting, he would lock the phone and say it was just work stuff. Colleagues, nothing important. I started feeling a distance between us that I could not name. When I suggested we take a vacation, just the two of us, Derek said he could not get away from work. When I brought up trying for a baby, he said it was not the right time, maybe next year. When I tried to plan a date night, he always had somewhere else to be. I blamed myself at first. Maybe I was not being supportive enough. Maybe I had let myself go. Stopped being the fun, exciting woman he had married. I bought new dresses, tried new recipes, made more effort to be the wife I thought he wanted. None of it seemed to make a difference. Lauren noticed before anyone else. We were having coffee one Saturday afternoon. A rare moment when Derek was at yet another work event, and she studied me with those sharp lawyer eyes. "Joe," she said carefully, "when was the last time Derek took you anywhere? Just the two of you?" I started to answer, then stopped. I could not remember. Months, maybe. A year? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I am not saying anything is wrong," she said, "but maybe pay attention. That is all." I told myself she was being paranoid. Derek loved me. We were happy. A rough patch did not mean anything serious. Marriages go through seasons, and we would find our way back to each other. I kept telling myself that lie until the day I could not anymore. The day I discovered the truth started like any ordinary Thursday. My company had given us an unexpected half-day off due to some building maintenance issue, and I left the office at noon with a lightness in my step. The sun was shining, spring was in full bloom, and I decided to surprise Derek at his office. We could grab lunch together, maybe reconnect during a rare midday escape. I stopped at his favorite deli and picked up sandwiches, the same order we used to share when we were dating. I drove to his office building feeling almost giddy, like I was a newlywed again. This would be the start of getting us back on track, I told myself. Sometimes you just need to make the effort. I parked in the visitor lot and was walking toward the building when I saw them. Derek was standing by a silver sedan at the far end of the parking lot. A woman was with him, younger than me, with long dark hair and a fitted dress that hugged every curve. They were not talking. They were kissing her arms wrapped around his neck, his hands on her waist, their bodies pressed together, like they had forgotten the rest of the world existed. I stood frozen on the pavement, the deli bag slipping from my fingers. The sandwiches hit the ground, but I did not notice. I could not process what I was seeing. My brain refused to accept it. Then the woman pulled back, laughing at something Derek said, and I recognized her. Megan. She worked in his department. I had met her at company events, shaken her hand, smiled politely while Derek introduced her as one of his best salespeople. She had looked at me with such friendliness, complimented my dress, asked about my work. She had been sleeping with my husband. I do not know how long I stood there. Long enough for them to get into separate cars and drive away. Long enough for the spring sunshine to feel like ice on my skin. Long enough for every happy memory of the past 8 years to curdle into something unrecognizable. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The house looked different when I pulled into the driveway. The same white siding, the same roses, the same porch swing. But it felt like I was seeing it through shattered glass. I went inside and sat in the dark living room, waiting. The sandwiches were still on the ground in that parking lot, a pathetic metaphor for everything I had tried to hold together. Derek came home at his usual late hour, walking through the door with his usual tired sigh. He loosened his tie, kicked off his shoes, headed for the kitchen without really looking at me. I stopped him with one question. "Who is Megan?" He froze mid-step. I watched his back stiffen, watched his shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. When he turned around, his face was carefully blank. Megan. She is just someone I work with. Why I told him what I had seen. Every detail. The silver car, the kiss, the way she had laughed. I kept my voice steady, even though everything inside me was screaming. Derek did not apologize. He did not deny it. Instead, his face twisted into something I had never seen before, an ugly combination of annoyance and contempt. "Fine," he said. "You want the truth? Megan understands me. She appreciates me. You're always tired, always busy, always worried about something. When was the last time you actually paid attention to me, Joanna?" I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. I had spent years supporting his career, maintaining our home, trying to be the perfect wife, and he was blaming me for his betrayal. 8 years, I said. 8 years. And this is what you have to say. He shrugged, like we were discussing the weather. People change. Feelings change. I did not plan for this to happen, but it did. Maybe it is a sign that we were never right for each other. He slept on the couch that night. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like someone had reached inside my chest and ripped out everything that mattered. The man I had married, the future I had planned, the family I had dreamed of building, all of it had been a lie. Over the following days, I tried to salvage something. I suggested counseling, a separation period, anything that might help us find our way back. Derek dismissed every option with growing impatience. He was barely present, coming home only to shower and change clothes before leaving again. His phone buzzed constantly with messages he did not bother to hide anymore. I found receipts in his jacket pockets. Expensive restaurants I had never been to. A hotel room downtown. Jewelry from a store where I had never received a gift. The affair had been going on for over a year. While I had been cooking his dinners and maintaining his house and waiting for him to come home, he had been building a whole other life with someone else. I called my mother one evening, barely able to speak through the tears. She listened without interrupting, then said she would be there first thing in the morning. True to her word, she arrived at dawn, holding me while I sobbed into her shoulder like a child. "You still have the house," she reminded me gently. "Whatever happens, you have that." But in that moment, the house felt like small comfort. I had lost so much more than property. I had lost 8 years. I had lost the person I thought I knew, I had lost my faith in my own judgment. I did not know yet that Derek was about to demand even more. 2 weeks after I confronted him about Megan, Derek came home with a different energy. He walked through the door with purpose, his shoulders squared, his jaw set. He sat down across from me in the living room like we were about to negotiate a business deal. "I want a divorce," he said. "Megan and I are going to be together. Officially. I need you to accept that." I had been expecting this. After everything, the word divorce almost felt like relief. At least the pretending would be over. At least I could start healing. But Derek was not finished. "We need to talk about the house," he continued. "It is worth a lot of money now. Property values in this area have skyrocketed. I talked to a realtor, and she thinks we could get at least 400,000 for it." I felt the first flicker of alarm. "What are you talking about?" Derek smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am talking about selling this house and splitting the proceeds. Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state. We have been married 8 years. I am entitled to my share of our marital assets, and this house is the biggest one." "You want to sell my grandmother's house?" "Our house," Derek corrected. "We have lived here together for 8 years. We made it a home together. I have just as much right to it as you do." I stared at him, trying to comprehend the audacity. This man who had betrayed me, humiliated me, destroyed our marriage, now wanted to profit from the only thing I had left. "Megan thinks we should sell as soon as possible," he added casually. "The market is hot right now. She found a great penthouse downtown that she wants us to look at. All we need is the money from this place." He was planning to buy a home for his mistress with money from selling my grandmother's legacy. The sheer cruelty of it took my breath away. Derek must have seen something in my face because he leaned forward, his expression hardening. "Do not make this difficult, Joanna. I have already talked to a lawyer. If you refuse to sell voluntarily, I will take this to court. These things get ugly and expensive. You cannot afford a long legal battle." "I can." He stood up, brushing invisible lint from his pants. "You have 1 month to agree to the sale. After that, I file papers, and we do this the hard way." He left me sitting there, my hands cold, my mind racing. He sounded so confident, so certain that he had already won. The next week brought fresh humiliation. I came home from work one afternoon to find Derek and Megan in my house. They had not called, not asked permission. Derek had simply brought her through the front door like she belonged there. Megan walked through the rooms with appraising eyes, running her fingers along the furniture, pausing to examine the artwork. She was dressed impeccably, designer clothes and perfect makeup. Her presence a violation of everything this house represented. "The kitchen is dated," she announced. "But with renovations, it could be stunning." She turned to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You have taken good care of the place," she said, "but it needs a more modern touch. When we sell, we should probably update a few things first to maximize the price." I could not speak. Derek stood beside her, nodding along like everything she said was perfectly reasonable. Like this woman had any right to critique the home my grandmother had built. Megan moved to the living room windows, gesturing at the view. "This is what sells the property," she told Derek. "Location, location, location. I bet we could get offers within a week if we price it right." She turned to me, tilting her head with mock sympathy. "I know this must be hard for you, but you need to accept that he has moved on. Holding on to this house will not change anything. It will just make everything more painful." I felt rage building in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Reacting was what they wanted. I would not give them the satisfaction. Derek walked Megan out an hour later, leaving me alone in the house that suddenly felt contaminated by her presence. I scrubbed the counters she had touched, washed the glasses she had used, tried to erase any trace of her invasion. Over the following days, Derek escalated his pressure campaign. He left printouts of real estate listings on the kitchen counter. He forwarded emails from his lawyer outlining his supposed rights to the property. He gave me deadlines, ultimatums, threats. "You are being unreasonable," he said. "Everyone gets divorced. Adults handle it and move on. Why are you making this so hard?" I felt myself weakening. The constant pressure, the legal threats, the exhaustion of fighting alone. Maybe he was right. Maybe the house was not worth the battle. Maybe I should just take whatever money I could get and start over somewhere else. I was at my lowest point, sitting alone in the kitchen at midnight when my phone rang. It was Lauren. "Joe." She said, "I have been thinking about you all day. How are you holding up?" I told her everything. The divorce demand the house. Megan's inspection tour, the threats of court. I told her I was starting to think I should just give in. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her words changed everything. "Joanna," she said slowly, "did you forget about the paperwork we did before your wedding?" I blinked, confused. "What paperwork?" "The waiver," she said. "Derek signed a waiver relinquishing all rights to the house. The trust your grandmother set up. The documents that keep it separate from marital property. Joanna Derek has no claim to that house. None." I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. "Are you sure?" Positive Lauren said. "I drafted those papers myself. Your grandmother set up the trust specifically to protect the house from situations exactly like this. And Derek signed away any rights he might have had before you ever walked down the aisle. He cannot touch it." I started to cry, but for the first time in weeks, they were not tears of despair. "We need to meet," Lauren said. "Tomorrow. Bring whatever copies you have of those documents. I will review everything and confirm that your position is solid. But Joanna," I remember that waiver clearly. Derek did not read a single line before he signed it. That night I slept better than I had in months. I arrived at Lauren's office the next morning with a folder full of old documents, papers I had filed away 8 years ago and barely looked at since. The trust agreement from Grandma Ruth, the waiver Derek had signed, the notarized copies of everything. Lauren spread them across her desk, reading each page with the focused attention of someone who knows exactly what she is looking for. I sat across from her, my heart pounding, afraid that somehow I had misunderstood, that there would be some loophole, some technicality that Derek could exploit. After nearly an hour, Lauren looked up with a smile. "It is exactly what I remembered," she said. "Your grandmother was incredibly thorough. The house is held in a trust that specifically excludes it from marital property, and this waiver Derek signed is airtight. He acknowledged the trust, acknowledged that the property would remain solely yours, and relinquished any claim to it under any circumstances, including divorce." I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. "He really cannot take the house." "He cannot take the house," she confirmed. "He cannot force you to sell. He cannot claim any portion of its value. As far as the law is concerned, that property was never part of your marriage. It has always been yours and yours alone." Lauren made copies of everything certified and stamped, ready to present as legal evidence if necessary. She drafted a summary letter explaining the situation in clear terms, something Derek's own lawyer would immediately understand. "Any attorney worth their license will tell Derek to drop this immediately," she said. "He has no case. Zero. If he tries to take this to court, he will waste his money and lose. I can almost guarantee his lawyer will advise him to walk away." I thanked her so many times she finally had to laugh and push me toward the door. "Go home," she said. "And when you tell Derek, I want you to remember something. You did nothing wrong. You protected yourself just like your grandmother taught you. There is no shame in that. There is only wisdom." I drove to my mother's house next. She was in the garden when I pulled up, kneeling among her flowers with dirt on her gloves and sunshine in her hair. When she saw my face, she stood up immediately, worry flashing across her features. What happened? I told her everything. The trust, the waiver, Lauren's confirmation. I told her that Derek had no power here, that the house was safe, that Grandma Ruth's protection had held strong even after all these years. My mother started crying. She pulled me into a hug, squeezing tight, her body shaking with relief. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she whispered. "She always knew you would need this someday. She prayed you would not, but she made sure you were ready." We sat on her porch for hours talking about Grandma Ruth, about the house, about what comes next. My mother reminded me of all the stories, all the lessons, all the ways that remarkable woman had prepared the women in our family to stand on their own. That evening I called my brother Kevin. He had been worried about me for weeks, offering to come down and have a talk with Derek, a phrase that I suspected involved less talking and more intimidation. I told him the good news. "So that jerk gets nothing?" Kevin asked. "Nothing," I confirmed. "The house is mine. It always was." "Good," he said firmly. "Let me know if you need me there when you tell him. I would love to see his face." I declined gently. This was something I needed to do myself. Derek had made me feel small and powerless for months. I would be the one to show him how wrong he had been. That night I sat in the living room with the documents in my lap. I looked around at the walls. Grandma Ruth had known the floors. She had walked the windows through which she had watched decades of seasons change. She had built something permanent here, something that could not be taken by betrayal or greed. I understood now why she had been so insistent on the trust, on the protection, on teaching me to always have a backup plan. It was not about expecting men to fail. It was about knowing that life is unpredictable, and a woman who depends entirely on others leaves herself vulnerable. I was not vulnerable anymore. The next morning I woke up early and dressed carefully. I chose a navy blue suit, professional, and confident, the kind of thing I would wear to an important meeting. I wanted Derek to see someone different when he looked at me. Not the crying wife he had been bullying for weeks, not the broken woman who had begged him to reconsider. Someone new. I texted Derek and asked him to come by the house that evening. We needed to discuss the divorce terms, I said. He agreed immediately, probably thinking I was finally ready to surrender. He texted back that he would bring Megan. She wanted to measure some rooms. I told him that would be fine. Let them both come. Let them both see exactly what their greed had earned them. They arrived precisely at 6:00. Derek walked through the front door like he already owned the place, Megan trailing behind him in heels that clicked against the hardwood. She was dressed like she was attending a gallery opening, all sleek lines and expensive accessories. Derek had paperwork of his own, a folder stuffed with what I assumed were legal documents from his attorney. He dropped it on the coffee table with a thud. "I am glad you are finally being reasonable," he said. My lawyer drew up the listing agreement. "We just need your signature and we can have this place on the market by the end of the week." Megan settled onto my grandmother's sofa, crossing her legs and looking around with barely concealed impatience. "Can we speed this along?" she asked. "We have dinner reservations at 8. I remained standing calm and controlled. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head. "Before we discuss any sale," I said, "there is something you need to see." Derek sighed heavily, the way he always did when he thought I was being difficult. "What now?" "Joanna Moore stalling." I reached for the folder Lauren had prepared and placed it on the table beside his papers. "Do you remember I asked the documents you signed before our wedding?" Derek frowned, confused. "What documents?" "The waiver," I said. "The one that addressed this house. The one you signed without reading." I opened the folder and pulled out the trust agreement first. I held it up so he could see it clearly. My grandmother established this trust decades ago, I explained. It places the house outside of any marital property. It has always been mine alone, held separately from our marriage. Derek shook his head, dismissive. That does not matter. We have been married 8 years. Pennsylvania law gives me rights to marital assets. I pulled out the second document. The waiver, his signature at the bottom, bold and confident, dated 1 week before our wedding. You signed this, I said, right here in black and white. A waiver relinquishing any and all claims to this property, regardless of the length of our marriage, regardless of divorce proceedings, regardless of anything. I watched his face as he took the paper from my hands. I watched the confusion give way to disbelief, then to something that looked almost like fear. He did not remember. Of course he did not remember. He had signed it without reading, eager to move past the formality and get to the wedding. He had never cared about the details because he assumed they would never matter. This cannot be right, he muttered. This cannot be legal. It is completely legal, I said. Notarized, witnessed, and filed properly. My attorney has confirmed that it is airtight. You have no claim to this house, Derek. You never did. Megan stood up, her composure cracking for the first time. What does that mean? She demanded. Derek told me we were splitting the proceeds from this place. He said it was worth $400,000. I turned to her, keeping my voice perfectly level. Derek told you what he wanted to believe. The reality is that he signed away any rights to this house before we were even married. He owns nothing here, not a single floorboard. Derek's face had gone pale. He was reading the waiver now, actually reading it. His eyes moving frantically across the page as if the words might change if he stared hard enough. You tricked me, he said. You made me sign this knowing I would not read it. I shook my head. I explained exactly what it was. You chose not to pay attention. That is not a trick, Derek. That is a consequence. Megan turned on him, her voice sharp. You told me you owned half this house. You said we would have hundreds of thousands of dollars. You said we could buy the penthouse. I said what I thought was true, Derek stammered. I did not know about this waiver. I did not remember signing anything. She stared at him like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. The successful, confident man who had promised her everything was suddenly just a middle-aged sales manager with no assets and a mountain of broken promises. So, you have nothing, she said slowly. No house, no money, nothing. Derek tried to reach for her, but she stepped back. I think I need to reconsider some things, she said. Her voice was cold now, the warmth she had shown him evaporating like morning fog. Megan. Please, Derek begged. This changes nothing between us. We can figure something out. But Megan was already gathering her purse, her coat, her dignity. Actually, she said, I think it changes everything. She walked out the front door without looking back. The click of her heels faded into silence, followed by the sound of a car engine starting and pulling away. Derek stood in the middle of my living room, stripped of everything he thought he had. No house, no girlfriend, no power. He turned to me with desperation in his eyes. Joanna, he said, we can work this out. I made a mistake. I was confused. I still care about you. We could try again, maybe counseling. I almost laughed. After everything he had done, everything he had said, he was trying to crawl back now that his better option had disappeared. You do not love me, Derek. You never did. You loved what you thought I could give you. And now that you know I am not going to give you anything, suddenly you want to try again. I walked to the door and opened it. You have 1 week to remove your belongings from this house. After that, I am changing the locks. The divorce papers will come through my lawyer. Sign them and we can both move on with our lives. He stood there for a long moment, looking like a man who had just watched his entire world collapse. Then, without another word, he walked past me and out the door. I closed it behind him and leaned against it, breathing deeply. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine. Derek moved out 4 days later, packing his things into cardboard boxes while I supervised from the porch. He did not say much. The fight had gone out of him completely. I heard through mutual friends that Megan had ended things officially, that she had apparently been more interested in his projected wealth than in him personally. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Without the house to fight over, there was very little to divide. Derek got his clothes, his car, his retirement account. I got my freedom. The first weeks after he left were harder than I expected. Even when you know a marriage is over, even when you are relieved to see it end, there is still grief. I mourned the future I had imagined the children. We never had the version of Derek I had believed was real. My mother came to stay for a while. We fell into a comfortable routine, cooking together, working in the garden, watching old movies on rainy afternoons. She did not push me to talk about my feelings, but she was there when I needed to cry. Lauren visited often, bringing wine and laughter and stories from her work that reminded me there was life beyond my own drama. She had started dating someone new, a pediatrician with kind eyes, and her happiness was contagious. Kevin drove down one weekend to help me with some repairs Derek had left unfinished. We spent 2 days fixing a leaky faucet, replacing broken shutters, and painting the guest room a cheerful shade of yellow. He did not say much about what had happened, but he hugged me extra long when he left. Slowly, day by day, I started to rebuild. I signed up for a yoga class at the community center. At first I felt awkward and out of place, but the instructor was patient, and something about the practice helped quiet the noise in my head. I started going 3 times a week, then every day. I joined a book club through the local library. A small group of women who met monthly to discuss novels and drink tea, and occasionally gossip about their lives. I made friends there, real friends who did not know me as Derek's wife, who only knew me as Joanna. I returned to the garden with new determination. I planted flowers. Grandma Ruth had loved varieties I remembered from childhood summers. I grew vegetables for the first time, tomatoes and peppers and herbs that I used in meals I cooked just for myself. Work improved too. Without the constant stress of my crumbling marriage, I could focus again. I took on new projects, mentored younger colleagues, earned a reputation as someone who could solve problems and lead teams. My boss mentioned promotion possibilities, and for the first time in years, I felt excited about the future. A year passed, then another. One autumn afternoon, I sat on the porch swing where I had spent so many hours with Grandma Ruth. The garden was in full bloom, bursting with colors she would have loved. The house stood solid and beautiful behind me, every creak and corner familiar as my own heartbeat. I thought about what she had taught me. Not just about backup plans and protecting yourself, though those lessons had saved me. She had taught me something deeper. That strength is not about never getting hurt. It is about knowing you can survive the hurt and keep going. I understood now why she had been so insistent on independence. It was not about distrusting men or expecting the worst from life. It was about building a foundation solid enough to withstand whatever storms might come. She had given me that foundation, both literally in this house and figuratively in the values she instilled. Derek had tried to take it all. He had lied, cheated, manipulated, threatened. He had been so certain of his power, so confident that I would crumble. He never expected me to be prepared. He never imagined that a piece of paper he signed without reading would be his undoing. He thought he knew who I was, but he never really saw me at all. Sometimes I wonder if I will love again. The thought does not scare me anymore. If it happens, it happens. If not, I have a full life anyway. Friends who care about me, family who supports me, work that challenges me, a home that holds generations of love within its walls. I learned something important through all of this. The people who truly love you do not ask you to give up pieces of yourself. They do not demand that you sacrifice your security for their benefit. They do not see your protection as a threat. Derek saw my grandmother's trust as an obstacle, something that stood between him and what he wanted. A person who actually loved me would have seen it as what it was: a gift from a woman who wanted her granddaughter to be safe no matter what. I keep that waiver in a frame now hanging in my home office. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Sometimes the most important things we do are the small ones. The precautions we take, the documents we sign, the preparations we make, hoping we will never need them. Grandma Ruth used to say that hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, was not pessimism. It was practical wisdom. She was right about so many things. Sitting on that porch swing, watching the autumn leaves fall, I feel something I was not sure I would ever feel again. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger. The knowledge that I survived the worst someone could do to me and came out the other side. Derek thought he was selling our home. He did not realize he had never owned any part of it. The house belonged to my grandmother, then to me, and someday to whoever I choose to pass it on to. It was never his to sell, never his to claim, never his to take. Some things cannot be stolen. Some things are protected by love and wisdom, and a grandmother who saw the future clearly enough to prepare for it. I smile as the sun sets over the garden. The house stands strong behind me, exactly as it has for more than 80 years. Exactly as it will stand for decades more. Some papers, it turns out, are worth reading before you sign them. Derek learned that lesson too late. I learned it just in time. Here is what I want to leave you with. Sometimes the documents we dismiss as formalities turn out to be the most important things we ever sign. Derek did not read because he did not care about the details. He only cared about getting what he wanted as fast as possible. That impatience cost him everything he thought he was entitled to. Protect yourself, not because everyone will betray you, but because you deserve to have a foundation that cannot be shaken. Grandma Ruth taught me that. I am grateful every single day that I listened. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever signed something without reading it completely? Have you ever had a moment where a small precaution you took ended up saving you from something bigger? Share your stories in the comments below. I would love to know that I am not the only one who has learned this lesson. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel so you do not miss the next one, share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I appreciate every single one of you. Until next time, remember this. You are stronger than you know. You are worth protecting. And sometimes the best thing your loved ones can give you is not just their love, but the tools to stand on your own 2 feet. Take care of yourselves.